Awesome. This is the fourth and last video to walk you through how to use MusiQuest Lesson Composer. If you'll remember, in the third video we were focused on task view and talked a little bit about the categorization, the way that you can edit and view your lessons. This video is focused on some of the more advanced functionality in MusiQuest Lesson Composer, especially in the edit mode. I do want to come back to the transitions as an example of how lessons can get more complex and how you can become more of a craftsperson in creating your lessons. Because the transitions are really about pacing, and they're also about creativity. Do you want students to be making their own choices in a task? If so, you almost surely want a manual transition so that they have time, that they're self-paced. If it's really just more of a bridge to a new concept or to set up the core learning objective, then automatic is probably going to be more effective because it'll ensure that they just move forward as quickly as possible. So let's go into editing the second task here. And let's say that I actually felt that I didn't do enough in the first task, that I wanted to talk a little bit more about the piano. I could insert here, and this is going to give me a new task 2 instead of my former task 2. And you can see I'm back with the piano. I could re-record the voiceover here, maybe mix the melody up as needed. Let's look at some other advanced functionality. We've got this button wipe here. Wipe is a little scary, but it'll always give you a dialogue. If anything's in red, you're not going to lose it right away if you press it. You're going to get more information. And again, this toolbar is going to be even prettier when you're using the application. So wipe is going to delete all of the current suggestion notes. And I actually do want to do that here. So I'm again in my task 2, my first task, I built those suggestion notes. Now I just want to, for simplicity, get rid of them and build out a new melody for children to interact with. And I'm actually going to use the rhythm validation option here to give them more of a chance to be creative. So instead of selecting their exact notes for them, what I'm now going to do is I'm now going to give them basically areas that they can place their notes in. And you may be familiar with this functionality from your own experience of using MusiQuest and seeing students interact. If I double tap in the same column, then it'll just be length 1. If I tap and then I tap somewhere else, that will dictate the length of the note. If I tap again, it'll delete. So this is a little bit tricky, and sometimes it can be a little confusing, but it's a really powerful way to give students more control, because now when I go and I run this task, instead of being told exactly where to put my notes as a student, I am going to first move through task 1.
Tap in the boxes to get this lesson started.
Always got to finish task 1 before you can go to task 2. Actually, if you preview from the task list, then you're fine. Now I've got these new notes to add, and you can see that I'm supposed to fill out the box, but I have a choice. Do I put it up top? Do I put it down at the bottom? It allows for more of that creativity. So this is one of the sort of advanced functionality that we have in MusiQuest Lesson Composer. Let's look at a few other options, and they're mostly based here in these last 2 settings tabs on the song settings: validation, replication. So first, replication. Replication is a little, it takes a little time to get used to, and it's something that is really useful, where you can basically copy over all of the notes to different target measures. And this just makes it easier for you as creators. It reduces some of the additional burden of making lessons. You can choose to copy over, let's say, just the chord notes, or you could choose to copy over the entire song so that all those notes, suggestion notes, are put into a second or third page, or we would call them, third and fourth bars or measures that extends a student's learning. Replication validation means that a student has to do that. They have to recreate accurately themselves. And in general, you can think about validation as basically being the equivalent of quiz. And we're working on building more of this complexity into MLC because we do want to test students for whether they're paying attention, whether they're learning. And validation is our way to basically do that. So there's a couple different states here that you can read more about in the user docs I'm going to highlight challenge mode as what we currently have for the most difficult, type of quiz. Let me get rid of these boxes just for simplicity. There they go. And let me add a new trumpet. And I'm just so I can be sure I complete this, because I'm like any student, not always as good at this as I'd like to be. I'm adding those 2 full notes. Now I'm running the lesson again as a student. It's going to take me to task 1. I'm going to knock task 1 out. That's easy, because in task 1 the suggestion notes are visible to me, which is the sort of default state. But in task 2 we've added this challenge validation. So I'm here, again, in a lesson that I've really built, I would have this voiceover which says, now add 2 whole notes at the bottom and the second to bottom row of the melody section, right? Or something like that. If I add this note here, I'll get my frowny face, right? I didn't get it right. If I add my note here, then I'm actually succeeding in putting the note right where you as the lesson instructor has dictated it. And similarly here. So this is the power of challenge mode, is it actually hides the suggestions and forces a student to recreate it from memory, which is pretty significant. In addition to challenge mode, again, validation can be found here in the settings tab. We have ways to test whether they're accurately reflecting the melody through harmony, whether their chords are all rhythmically matching, and then strict validation. And these are all useful settings for even more intensive and creative lessons. Finally, we have a few additional options down here at the bottom. Chord Display will show students the chords as they make the lesson. So if I run now, and I've toggled on Chord Display for task 2, again, we'll walk through task 1. There it is, very familiar at this point. Pretty good at filling out those boxes. And, oh, there we go. Now here in task 2, remember I had challenge validation on, so I'm not seeing suggestion notes, but I also now have these chord boxes where I, as a student, the person who's using your lesson is going to be able to adjust and choose their chords from the big list here. So if you want to make a lesson about chords, if you want to give students even more additional creativity, you can use that chord display toggle here on the validation settings to give them additional control. Measure View works very similar and currently for iOS only, but coming soon to web. If I put Measure View on, then when I run this as a student, I think we're going to see this task 1 just one more time. We'll see. Run this as a student. There's that friendly next button. Now, up in the top right corner here, I have the icon for Measure View. So the students will be able to write lyrics, and they can't add additional sections because, again, this is your lesson. So you would need to create additional measures in the lesson to support that, but they can add lyrics. And if you've made those additional measures for them with the intent or some sort of specific learning objective, then that can be a really effective lesson. Finally, we have this reset user content. And reset user content is going to not just get rid of all of the notes that the student has already added. So if I tap in here and run one last time, we're going to go through that familiar first task.
The most popular and well-known
Here we go.
instrument is the piano.
And remember, we toggled on reset user content for task 2. And as a result, when I go to task 2, the notes are gone because we reset them. We still have our creator challenge mode on after all this time, right? We have to put the whole notes in the correct place to be able to move on, which is going to be here and here. But those melody notes from the piano have disappeared because, again, we chose to do that reset user content. So this is a really effective way to sort of introduce a concept and then say, now let's start from scratch, you do it. Or, okay, so we've covered that, now we're going to do something new, and you reset user content, you wipe suggestions, and you have a clean field within the scope of the same lesson. So this is some of the advanced functionality. It's been fun to walk through with you, and I'm guessing that you might need to see this a few times, consult the documentation. If you feel like it went through by a little quickly, really just call us up and let's get on Skype and let's work it together, because this is some of the most fun parts of the platform. It allows for really, distinctive and effective learning experiences for children, but it also is definitely a little more advanced. So we're going to support you in that, and we're going to support you in every way through using this whole application to create amazing interactive experiences for your own students and for children around the world. And we're grateful for your effort. This has been the fourth of 4 intro videos to MusiQuest Lesson Composer, and surely there will be more soon as we get your requests for support and as we continue to add additional features. Thank you. Hey, who doesn't love a little bonus content? So my producers have reminded me there's actually 2 different ways to ensure that you don't have to run every task. You can preview from the task list, which is going to bring me back into that challenge state. If you recall, I've got to put these 2 notes in there without the suggestion notes, but I didn't have to add the melody notes, which is huge. What you saw me doing throughout this video was in here, hitting run, and then moving through the first task. If you actually hold down on run, it'll give you the same set of preview options that you have on the task list, where you can choose to run from any task. So if I choose to run from task 2, it'll be the same experience that we just saw, where I don't have to fill in the melody notes and I'm back into the challenge. I can even, if I'm in task 2, click in, hold run, and run from task 4 or 5, any given task, to see it from the student's perspective without having to fill in all the notes yourself. So this just makes things a little bit more efficient, and my producer wanted me to ensure that you had that ease, and this is the type of feature that we're just going to keep producing to make the whole experience as fun and as creative as possible.